Greetings, today is Saturday, August 9th, 2025. This is meteorologist Ruben Garcia. At the time of recording this video, it is 7:15 in the morning, local time in the Eastern Caribbean, where we will be closely monitoring a strong tropical wave that has just left Africa. This tropical wave is the system we have been talking about in recent days, which we knew was going to have very favorable conditions to form into a tropical cyclone as it moves west-northwest across the Atlantic. In addition, there is a lot of interest in this tropical wave because it is the strongest that has come out of Africa this year, and there is a strong consensus that it will eventually become the first hurricane of the season and, if it reaches areas of the southwestern Atlantic, it will likely find very favorable conditions to strengthen significantly. So, in this video I will be talking about why the initial stage of development will be the most important to determine how close or far it may pass from the northeastern Caribbean. We will also talk about the consensus among global models that it will maintain a west-northwest track, and that once it crosses longitude 50 degrees west, it may find extremely favorable conditions for significant strengthening. And apart from the northeastern Caribbean, it is also important that residents of the eastern United States and the Bahamas pay attention to the evolution of this future cyclone, as it could eventually head toward that area. After several days of analyzing weather models, finally yesterday the National Hurricane Center marked the tropical Atlantic area with a 20% chance of development over the next 7 days related to the tropical wave that has just left Africa. In fact, at 2 a.m., in the Tropical Outlook, the National Hurricane Center increased the chances of development to 30%, and it is very likely that at 8 a.m. and throughout the day the chances will continue to increase due to the consensus among global models. And briefly, I wanted to mention that Invest 96 has begun to decrease its chances of tropical cyclone development. Since yesterday it has not been able to maintain an area of convection near the center of circulation, which is making its potential for tropical cyclone development more difficult. However, Invest 96 does not pose a threat to land, and in the coming days the tropical wave we are monitoring will be designated as Invest 97. Let's zoom in on the infrared satellite image where the tropical wave is located. You can see it is situated southeast of the Cape Verde Islands, and is accompanied by a rather large moisture field, which will give it the opportunity to survive the dry and stable conditions prevailing in the tropical Atlantic. Currently, the area of maximum vorticity is located approximately in this area, that is, quite far south, and is part of a much broader circulation in a scenario that can make it somewhat difficult to clearly establish where that center of circulation will consolidate over the next 48 hours. And I mention this because the next 48 hours will be very important to determine its future track, as if the center of circulation consolidates farther north, it could eventually reduce the risk for the northeastern Caribbean, while if it stays a bit farther south, it could get closer to the Caribbean. Fortunately, the consensus is that the center of circulation will be moving on the northern side of the broad circulation and probably consolidating near the Cape Verde Islands. Under this scenario, in the long term it could pass just northeast of the Caribbean. Even so, throughout next week it is important that we continue to follow the model projections and the tropical outlooks from the National Hurricane Center, as we do know that high pressure in the North Atlantic will be very strong by the middle and end of next week, which means the future tropical storm or Hurricane Erin will have a mostly westward track, and we cannot even rule out that at some point it might have a southwestward component. Also, the strong high pressure could put sectors of the U.S. East Coast at greater risk. In the next image you can see in green the moisture field accompanying the tropical wave. And although, as I mentioned yesterday, there is quite a bit of dry and stable air in the tropical Atlantic, this moisture field is so large that it appears it will protect the center of circulation, which has dramatically increased the chances of tropical cyclone development. In addition, in the long term, our concern is that once it crosses longitude 50 degrees west, it will begin to move over very warm sea surface temperatures, particularly just east of Florida and in the Bahamas region, where temperatures exceed 30 degrees Celsius, and any cyclone moving through this area can strengthen significantly. Also, remember that the upper-level atmospheric pattern can favor rapid strengthening. For example, long-range models project that an upper-level anticyclone may establish itself over the southwestern Atlantic, providing good ventilation aloft, and thus favoring significant strengthening if the future tropical storm or Hurricane Erin moves through this region. So it is very likely that during the coming week we will be talking a lot about the evolution of this tropical wave. So I ask for patience from residents of the Caribbean and the eastern United States, as we will be monitoring this disturbance over the next 7 to 9 days. The important thing is that it is still very far away, and we will have many days to watch calmly, and eventually by the middle of next week we will have a better picture of which areas could be at risk. But for now it is too early to talk about specific tracks. Even so, preliminarily we do have some trends that may be favorable for the northeastern Caribbean. If we look at the projections in 6 to 7 days, the ensemble members, most of them, maintain a track just northeast of the Caribbean. although there is still a large margin of error from a track far out in the central Atlantic to other tracks near just northeast of the Lesser Antilles. Also, note that in 6 to 7 days some members already show perhaps a hurricane developing in this area, and there is good consensus when compared with the ensemble members of the European model. In about 7 days, most have a hurricane passing just northeast of the Caribbean and with good consensus that it will remain distant from the Lesser Antilles and Puerto Rico. But remember that this is subject to what happens over the next 48 hours and how much latitude that center of circulation can gain if it consolidates on the northern side of the broad circulation. That is why I emphasize that the next 48 hours will be key to knowing more precisely what its future track could be. In addition, the ensemble members of Google's artificial intelligence model, basically all of them, maintain that track just northeast of the Caribbean, although there is still a large margin of error, which is totally normal when systems are in the process of forming. This consensus also includes runs from operational models. For example, in its latest run, the American model between next Friday and Saturday has a hurricane maintaining a track about 200 or 300 miles northeast of the Lesser Antilles, while the European model has a tropical storm moving between 300 and 350 miles northeast of the Caribbean. The German model also maintains a track away from the Lesser Antilles, as does the UK model, which has a much farther north track. And although these projections at 6 or 7 days can change a lot and we see some fluctuations between model runs, for example, here we have the last 4 projections from the American model for next Friday night, and you can see some fluctuations in where that center of circulation could be located, some a bit closer to the Lesser Antilles, and others a bit farther away. So these fluctuations are totally normal, and this is what we know as the margin of error, and why we must still remain alert in the northeastern Caribbean, even though the trends are to keep that track just northeast of the Caribbean. But importantly, I will continue to monitor throughout the weekend to see exactly where that center of circulation consolidates. Well, that's all for this forecast update. It is very likely that I will be recording the next video on Sunday morning. And before I go, I want to invite you to give this video a like. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and click on the bell so you receive notifications when I record new videos. I hope everyone has an excellent weekend. See you next time.